to put a bow on it, and why we've talked about these quarterbacks over at our show sponsor DraftKings, the quarterbacks are the favorite guys to go number one overall. Bryce Young minus 165 right now to be the first pick. CJ Stroud plus 450. Anthony Richardson, the steam has continued 5-1 now. Will Levis.
It's down to 5-1 today. It was 7-1 when Ellie and I did the show on Sunday. It was 7-1.
He's 5-1 now at DraftKings. We'll see. We'll see.
Look. Here's what I will say to that. I don't have any look. I thought the kid could be a Heisman Trophy winner this year.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he played inconsistently. I think he's incredibly talented. I think this is like taking a high school kid in basketball. This is taking like somebody who is really talented and that he's just not a finished product. I think what helps this kid is Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen. Because there's a perception out there that you can get these guys to become better than they are. Now, Josh Allen reverts back to being an inaccurate thrower. Nobody admits it, but he does. And sometimes it's at critical times. But his skill set is so unique, and he's so hard to tackle. Like Richardson, he gets a long whistle by the officials. You can't get him on the ground. He's hard to defend. Even when you have a free runner, he gets away from it. So I think, to me, I'm not saying he deserves to be the first overall pick. I think his talent's there. I think the question you got to ask yourself is, where are we going if we have him, and how we get there?
It's going to be one of the more fascinating discussions of traits versus production. I think is always at the top of mind during draft season. It's why I love it, because I don't think.
But this is why this is what drives me crazy about the NFL draft season. Okay, and I'll send you the grading system so you can. It's an Excel document. It's a zillion pages. I mean, But what drives me crazy is now this verbiage. I think he's going to be a second rounder. Okay, I think he's going to be a third rounder. I have no idea what that means. Because if you're Ryan Poles and you're watching Bryce Young and somebody says he's going to be a first rounder, how does that relate to Justin Fields? How does it relate to Justin Fields, right? Like, I've got to be able to have a grading system that's comprehensive enough that gives me verbiage to describe accurately what this player will become. So how is that going to transpose itself if I just say he's a first rounder? Or if I have a grading system that's built completely on what round is the guy going to go in? Like, for example, if I were to say to you, like, I'll look at my grading system on quarterbacks, okay? So, and this is something that when Belichick and I got to Cleveland, one of the benefits that we both had with each other is the fact that we both had come from a system that was started by the Cowboys and got developed. But once we got there, then we kind of modified it into, because it was kind of a rigid. But so when you're talking about a guy who's a blue chip player, you're talking about demonstrates rare abilities, right? So, like, does he have rare abilities? He creates mismatches every single week. He combines competitiveness and skill to have consistent championship level of play. He's the first player on the work. He's Pro Bowl talent, not this Pro Bowl, but that. Like, so then you start that verbiage tells you who the guy is.
Mm-hmm.
And the verbiage translates to who you're playing with. And if you don't have verbiage, you can't get this done.
Yeah, it just can't be like a first rounder, second rounder, third rounder. It has to be in comparison to guys that we've seen in the past. How would this player stack up? I think is kind of how you get the full picture.
Parcells wrote this. I mean, I don't often read the website, the 33rd team. I mean, I've looked at it. It's got a lot of guys on it. I love reading Parcells stuff. It's the best stuff on the site. And he talks about how you avoid exceptions. And really what he's talking about this grading system. He's talking about how this grading system limits you from making mistakes. It protects you from making mistakes. It guides you into not making mistakes. And so if you don't have that, if you just have a generic, he's a first rounder, he's a second rounder, you're just going to continue to make, and you're going to become a team of exceptions. So, I mean, and if you're team building, you got to have that.
Real quick here before we take another break, who's your highest graded quarterback ever? Do you have that off the top of your memory, or is that close by? You don't have to dig too deep.
Well, it's funny because I got in the league after the '83 draft, so I would say in my career, Peyton probably was the highest rated player. People had Ryan Leaf as the second one, but if you did any research on Ryan Leaf, and he straightened up his life now, and he's been great. Yep. But there was a lot of stuff at if you just understood what was going on campus there, you could find out a lot of stuff there. It wasn't clean. It wasn't clean when he visited Oregon. It wasn't clean. So I would say through my career, I would say probably Peyton would be the highest one. I'm trying to think. Because when you put him in this category, Peyton had he wrote the description. I didn't do Montana. I went back and read the greatest thing ever in my life was I was able to read reports, right? I was able to read scouting reports from old scouts, Walt Jaworski, great old scouts, Bob Whitman and these guys, Ernie Plank, they wrote great reports and you could read them and you could learn from them. And you could because remember when scouts back in the day were writing reports, they had to describe the player to the person reading them because there wasn't any tape on them. There wasn't video. You maybe had 3 cans of tape. So when you wrote Jerry Rice's report, you had to be descriptive and describe what you were seeing. You had to be really a reporter. So it really enhanced the value of the report. But now once video came in, it became just a little bit of everything.
So Peyton Manning, who ended up being the number one overall pick.
I'd have to go through all of it, but I would say that, I think me, I was fortunate enough to, we were always looking for a guy and never really found it. Like in Cleveland, we had Kozar was there before I got there. And then we signed Testaverde as a free agent. And then, in Philly, we didn't really have one. We couldn't find one. I was only there for a year. And then at the Raiders, we signed Gannon. And then we kept looking to sign Kerry Collins. We kept looking for the guy. Roethlisberger was a guy that Angie Koya, the great scout who passed away, was begging out a draft and was begging. And we ended up taking the safe player in the draft. Gallery ended up being not the safe player.
Thanks for watching the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi. And for more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to VSiN Live and the GM Shuffle podcast with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN, wherever you get your podcasts.